Can you put a different coat of paint on the game and call it your own? Does Age of Darkness Final Stand differentiate itself, or did I waste my goddamn money on a reskin? If you're a masochist and you're into long prep work followed by being stomped on, then this one's for you. Like they are billions, or TAB for short, we're out here for some reason trying to survive while not staying too far past our outhouse. Thematically, a bit of a Vermintide and an RTS package, but with a pause button? I really don't want to have this debate again. Is it a real-time strategy if you can pause? It shouldn't be, but literally everything screams RTS. It seems like it tried to painfully copy all the standards without enough understanding why. There's a bunch of jank in the controls, and the unit pathing sometimes seems to be one-to-one with a dead rat in a maze. If you pause and want to go into the options, then the game unpauses on the first key press and gives you the menu on the second. Double tapping a hotkey for a building or unit centers the camera, except if you rotate between two hotkeys too fast, then it's just flying from one to the other after a single tap. There's more, but we'll get to that later. First thing to do when you start the game is to declare allegiance to one of the groups. We got the Order, classified as defensive, for the standard casual that's afraid of attacking anything and just wants to play another SimCity game. Oddly enough, the old dude representing them gives me the exact opposite impression. Purify with fire kind of thing. Then there's the Rebellion, which I assume was done paying mandatory donations to the Order's religious entities, or they were kicked out because of the Queen being a cunt. I feel like there's a running joke somewhere around here. Queen of Nothing, her talking about her cup being empty, which I wrongly assumed was about her bra size, and the description stating that the faction is all about expansion. And then we got the Volatists, which are a cult led by Tom Hiddleston as Loki with red nail polish. Classified as aggressive as fun because they actually heal by attacking enemies with their throwaway cultist basic infantry that trains in pairs and never dies. Once you've picked your preferred flavor of cult, you're thrown into a map with a single building that makes you lose the game when it's destroyed. Your goal of surviving is achieved by plunking down wooden shacks of different varieties. Everything revolves around growth and figuring out what and when to spend on what. That's what we RTS snobs call build orders. Except they're not as reliable in this game because resource yields differ depending on the placement and can be boosted by certain building combos. You plop your structures on a grid identical to the one used in their Billions, maybe a bit less jarring. You're still stuck with two diagonals to work with, so the walls you build on horizontal choke points are gonna be looking like the builder had a fucking seizure. Also, remember to leave at least one grid lane open because it's hella easy to lock yourself in and only find out about it after you discover 40 units you've been missing lodged between two huts in a tree and like an ingrown toenail. While you're waiting for your next tick of resources, the game expects you to engage in combat, which consists of selecting a group of dudes in green circles and then telling them to attack a group of dudes in red circles. I'm not sure why I'm explaining this. What's interesting are the things that I totally ignored the first time I got my ass pounded. The two biggest factors in the game are unit confidence and armor. By confidence, I mean two actual mechanics. When engaging with an enemy, your soldiers can be hit with purple goop, which makes them spooked. They're afraid, so their attacks are weaker and they run slower. I think it would be the other way around, but well, what counteracts this is the light from your keep and the towers you build, or emboldenment. You achieve the latter by making your devotees fight at night. They'll fill a bar for a certain period of time, they're super confident, do more damage, etc. Armor, on the other hand, simply reduces damage taken by 70% until broken. And if you don't pay attention, all of your shit will die because you're not getting rid of it on enemies fast enough. That means you gotta supplement your death ball with pikemen and long-range penetrators like hunters or ballistic. The first one charging into enemies, and your main tank is usually going to be your hero. This is where Warcraft 3 influence shows, even though the movement and abilities resemble League of Legends. They have skills that unlock with levels and kind of build the style of how you engage in combat. The only problem, apart from lackluster tooltips, is that in 90% of the cases, abilities don't really feel impactful until you level your homeboy up. That's where the creeping comes in. You never want your army to stand around doing nothing, as you're effectively losing out on power gains of your champion. So whenever you're focusing on trying to make your city look pretty, tap the space button and make sure your chosen one is murdering something because that's the only way they learn. At the same time, they'll be accomplishing another goal, expansion. The whole 4-hour adventure in a single game revolves around your dudes clearing out parts of the forest to make space for more farms and mines while gathering whatever's lying on the floor and looting points of interest. While venturing out at night, you might also come into contact with what the game calls elite nightmares. Those fuckers threw me off as I thought they were extremely tough beefcakes, but it was just armor. All you have to do is wait until you get enough units with bigger dicks to penetrate their protection. The other thing you might find are giant red crystals. They're spawn points to what's supposed to be the game's biggest challenge. Every few days, Death Knight will occur. They really should have gone with a different name. Basically, a hole in the ground opens and a massive wave of cunts turns the whole RTS thing into a tower defense game. They're awfully easy the first and second time around, but the difficulty spikes insanely because the size of the wave grows more than exponentially each time. That's one of the problems with the game. Deceptive difficulty that made me perceive things as the exact opposite of how difficult they actually were. The whole game seems a lot easier than they are billions in general, but they do have some clever difficulty modifiers before you start the game. Things like no hero, no repairs, etc. if you're a challenge runner. Also that big red crystal. If you shatter it, you'll get some extra of the final resource needed for upgrades and units, but it will also skip your weekend by moving the next wave night to the next evening. I've usually ended up with more shard materials than I ever needed, so I'm not quite sure why I would ever want to touch one of those. Well, there's one reason. That's when the proper music kicks in. I've got Final Stand Frostpunk vibes from it, and that's a really good thing. 4th and 5th waves are massive with a few armored giants that will tear through your shit, and the tune perfectly resembles the Panic and Tension. The titular Final Stand also plays off this pretty well, because guess what? Once you've defended the growing waves from a single spawn point a few times, it's time for the game to crank it up and start shedding red variant of enemies from every hole you discovered like it's got food poisoning. They're all going to converge on your main building, so either wall up, man up, or preferably both, because God knows I've struggled for quite a bit before I just turned down to easy mode while whipping myself with the mouse cord as my gamer pride went down the fucking toilet. The other part of the sound design also surprised me. Not a single cringy voice line in a fantasy setting game. There were a few annoying ones like the empty bra one, but playing as the Order, I've got a real Purge the Heretics vibes like it was Warhammer.
I am the flame in the darkness.
Graphically, it's not amazing. It's a step up from Tab, but during the end game, the frame rate went from 140 to 50. Visuals aren't bad. They're pretty bland and uninspired, but they're not hard to look at least. The only thing that bothered me really was the fact that the villager house had only a single model, so after a couple of hours, my main base looked like a fucking wallpaper plaster with the same image over and over. The control groups and minimap were tiny, and I couldn't find a way to make them any bigger without scaling the whole interface up. But at least there's a zoom option, which makes the minimap cover 2/3 of your screen. The only thing that was truly baffling was the fact that on the map filled with brown and dark green looking terrain, your buildings are marked with a slightly brighter shade of brown. As a whole, the game was just okay. I restarted plenty of times, each time cursing the lack of a dedicated button in the menu, only to realize that there was no real reason to do so apart from the closest area being a bit different due to the random map generation. The longer I played, the more apparent it became that your choices didn't really matter that much in the long run. A single game is at least 4 hours long, not counting pauses, so you will get every single unit and upgrade researched. And I think therein lies the problem. The pacing is really off. You have a really long level compound with the pause functionality and no real pressure. Half the game you don't build any units, you just spend resources to generate more resources later. After that, you spam out units, walls, and towers. The funniest shit is that you can indefinitely expand your prep time by leaving a few monsters during the death knight and allowing them to gnaw on your structures, effectively giving you the time to farm and build equivalent to a few normal day cycles. The game costs $20 and you'll definitely get the game time out of it if you put surviving on normal or higher difficulty as your target, but it's definitely not for everyone, and there's an older game with more features out there already. There's only survival mode in Age of Darkness with a planned multiplayer and campaign, but who the hell knows when that's coming out. I'd say if you like this kind of RTS survival game, go for it, or even better, wait for it to be on sale as there's not many alternatives. Otherwise, I wouldn't really bother, and I say that as someone that loves RTS. If you liked it, pop over to my Twitch. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday evenings European time, and throughout the day on the weekends.
Keep warm, keep tight, keep safe with it.